Imagine walking into a pharmacy with a simple cold and being given heroin. It sounds crazy today, but a century ago, people really took heroin for a cough, even kids. Today, we know that heroin is a strong, dangerous, and heavily addictive drug. What if I told you that this is still happening today with substances very similar to heroin, opioids? It always begins with a promise to relieve pain, but then things take a troubling turn. From ancient opium to today's synthetic opioids like fentanyl, the pattern has always been the same. Big promises, deception, followed by catastrophe. And the story keeps repeating itself, even today. But let's start from the beginning, with a bright red poppy flower, the source of opium. For thousands of years, people have been getting high on the joy plant, for medical purposes like pain relief, but also for fun, drinking opium in tinctures, chewing the resin, or burning it and inhaling the smoke. This seemingly unremarkable flower led to a significant turning point in the 19th century, the Opium Wars. We could do an entire video about this chapter of history alone, but let's just say this. Britain imported opium from India to China, where the drug was illegal. Soon, addiction spread across society. China tried to suppress the influx, so Britain started a war that served the interests of opium smugglers and won. From then on, China had to loosen control over foreign trade, including opium imports. So the Opium Wars resulted in a large-scale crisis, altering political power, economic systems, and social life. From a medical point of view, opium had one major drawback. Its strength was notoriously unpredictable because it came from a plant. That was until this guy. Friedrich Seerturner, a German pharmacist's apprentice, managed to isolate the active ingredient. He named it morphine, after Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams. Together with the invention of the hollow needle by the Irish physician Francis Rind, it revolutionized surgical practice. Patients could be relieved from excruciating pain within minutes, and for many it felt too good to be true. By the 1870s, it had become clear that morphine hooked people into addiction. This became especially apparent during and after the American Civil War. Thousands of soldiers fell victim to the so-called soldier's disease, aka morphine addiction. If only there was a painkiller that wasn't so addictive.
Heroin.
Well, we all know how that ended. But yes, when heroin hit the market in the 1890s, it was marketed as a painkiller and cough medicine. During a time when respiratory diseases like tuberculosis plagued society, heroin seemed to be a closer step to the holy grail of pain relief. It was touted as stronger than morphine and allegedly less addictive. Ironically, it was even used to treat morphine addiction. Heroin couldn't live up to these promises, though. It was soon discovered that patients built a tolerance for it, meaning the longer the treatment, the more heroin you'd have to take. By the 1920s, rising heroin addiction was documented in several regions, most notably in Europe, the US, China, and Egypt. The drug's reputation shifted drastically, especially in the US, where racist narratives linked drugs to minorities, like opium to Chinese immigrants and cocaine to the black community. These stereotypes fueled fear and led to calls for tougher drug laws. In 1924, all use of heroin was made illegal. Heroin became far harder to obtain legally, but addiction wouldn't just vanish, so it meant big bucks for black market dealers. About a decade later, a major historical event would pretty much slam the door on even illegal heroin supplies, especially in the US, World War II. But it would open another. Up until then, drugs like heroin and morphine were derived from the poppy plant. But what if we could engineer a lab-made painkiller, unaffected by land quality, labor, weather, and time? Enter synthetic opioids. Some of the most eager early developers were, once again, the Germans. They ramped up research into synthetic opioids in preparation for the war. After all, a country heading into war can't afford to rely on morphine imported from abroad. When the war ended, the victorious Allies seized the research and the patents. Fast forward 50 years and we arrive at what is probably the most notorious case in opioid history, one that laid the groundwork for an opioid crisis that would claim the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans over the past 3 decades. In 1996, Purdue Pharma, owned by the Sackler family, introduced OxyContin, an extended-release opioid. This means it releases its effects gradually over several hours. The big promise? The risk of addiction was minimal. By 2004, OxyContin had become the most abused prescription opioid in the United States. But how did we get there? In the mid-1990s, pain was declared the nation's #1 enemy, and prescriptions of painkillers, including opioids, began to rise again. Even people without severe cancer-related pain were prescribed strong painkillers. And Purdue jumped on the bandwagon using aggressive marketing strategies. They held conferences for medical professionals in resorts across the country, used data to target physicians who were prescribing opioids generously, offered lucrative bonus systems to sales representatives and coupons with free multi-day trials for patients. The amount of money pumped into marketing a painkiller was unprecedented, and prescriptions skyrocketed, and more Americans became addicted to OxyContin. Some learned to crush the tablets in order to circumvent the extended release and receive the dose all at once. In 2007, Purdue pled guilty to misleading the public about the risks of OxyContin and paid $600 million in fines. But that's not the end of the story, neither for Purdue nor for opioid addiction. This was just the first wave of a three-wave opioid crisis that would sweep across the US. The first wave involved prescription opioids. The second wave saw a return to illegal heroin, which was primarily sourced from Mexico due to stricter prescription regulations in the US. And the third wave belongs to fentanyl. We've all seen the pictures in recent years. Fentanyl is up to 100 times more potent than morphine and also started as a painkiller. But the majority of the fentanyl contributing to the opioid crisis is produced illegally, mainly in China and Mexico. This little sachet can already be lethal. And here's the kicker. Producers mix fentanyl into all sorts of illegal products, including heroin and counterfeit pills, so many people get hooked on it without even realizing. Even though the US remains at the top of the rankings, the opioid crisis and overdose deaths aren't exclusive to the US. Puerto Rico, Scotland, and Canada rank 2nd through 4th. And it looks like history is repeating itself, this time in other continents like Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Tramadol is a synthetic opioid developed in the 1960s by German company Grünenthal. For a long time, it had a reputation as a mild opioid with a low risk of addiction. But reports indicate that young people in some African countries, particularly Ghana and Nigeria, have become addicted to tramadol. Scientific studies now back these claims. So where does this all leave us? Today, public health interventions mostly try to minimize the damage. In some countries, such as the US, Australia, Italy, and Ukraine, non-prescription medication is available to reverse opioid overdoses. And let's tie loose ends with Purdue and the Sacklers. The company sought bankruptcy protection as it faced thousands of lawsuits for its role in the opioid crisis. In 2025, they reached a settlement in court and are now required to pay $7.4 billion for their role in igniting one of the most devastating public health crises in American history, as stated by Attorney General Tong. It seems there's a recurring pattern throughout history. Opioid painkillers hit the market with the same big promise, that this time they won't cause addiction. But this is often followed by a surge in prescriptions that results in widespread addiction. It's a troubling history of prioritizing profit over the well-being of patients. So when will we learn? And with the new Tramadol crisis in full swing, one question remains. How will it end? What's your take? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked this video, please share or hit subscribe.